9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Discussing everything about the afterlife and spirit world. Coming to you all the way from Ireland, it's Sandie Byrne.
Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of Life After Life with me, Sandie Byrne. So in this episode I want to talk a little bit about psychic work and fortune telling, okay? And there is a difference. I'll get into that in a minute, okay? But I think it's important here that I begin by explaining again the difference between a medium and a psychic, okay? Because they're not interchangeable and they are very, very different, okay? So in short, a psychic is someone who can read the energy of the living, while a medium is someone who can read the energy of the dead. Okay, so I'm going to say that again. A psychic reads the energy of the living person, us. The medium reads the energy of the dead. Okay, and why is that different? Okay, so if you want to know what's coming up for you, what direction you should be taking in life, anything about you or your life, that's a psychic reading. Okay, that's what you need. You need someone to read you and your energy. On the other hand, if you want to connect with a loved one who has passed over to spirit, okay, then you would need to go and see a medium. The medium will read the energy of your loved one in spirit and pass on messages from them. Okay, but they're connecting directly with spirit, not with your energy. Okay, now I did talk more about the difference in this and the difference in how you get information a couple of episodes back in episode 158, if you want to have a listen to that at some point, okay? But here I'm talking about the different type of readings, okay? Because it's important that people understand the difference, okay? And I'm going to say it, but there are some readers out there who don't actually know the difference themselves, okay? They don't. Now, for example, and I'm not saying this person doesn't know the difference, but this is one of the things that kind of makes it confusing for people. Okay, so you may already have heard me talking about my admiration for a medium called Sally Morgan. Okay, I love her. I saw her in Waterford a few weeks ago. Love her. Okay, not the first time I've seen her several times. But Sally calls herself Psychic Sally because it's catchy. Okay, but it is in fact very, very misleading because Sally doesn't do psychic shows. She does mediumship shows, okay? She just uses psychic because medium Sally doesn't sound as catchy. Psychic Sally, medium Sally, okay? And to be fair, okay, Psychic Sandie would probably sound better than Sandie Byrne medium. But, you know, there you go. It is what it is. I feel that I am predominantly a medium anyway, okay? And the most of what I do is mediumship, okay? The majority of readings would be connected with people who've passed. Although I did start out reading tea leaves for people when I was just 5 years old. Okay, now that's a story for another day. Okay, I'm not going to go on too much of a tangent here. Okay, but I started when I was younger with the psychic work, then it developed into solely mediumship, and then the psychic side started to come out again. So, you know, those of you who are on a holistic journey, you'll understand that the more you start to use one ability, then the other ones will start to come to the forefront as well, okay? So, you know, you can have more than one ability, of course. Anyway, okay, it's really important, bearing this in mind, okay, like Psychic Sally Morgan, but you're not going to go to her to have your future told, you're going to go to her to connect with a loved one, okay? So it's important that you do a little bit of research before you book a reading, okay? But more importantly, it's really important, and it will determine the course of your reading if you give some thought to what you want to get out of a reading. Okay? And I say this because, you know, you can go for a mediumship reading, you know, talk to your loved ones, and you can get their opinion on what's going on in your life. Okay? And they can tell you what they think that you should do. But always remember that this is just an opinion. It's the very same as if you sat down to have a cup of coffee with them and a chat with them when they were alive. They'll give you their opinion. It's not some angelic guidance from above. If they weren't psychic when they were alive, they don't become psychic just because they've crossed over to spirit. They're telling you what they think. And believe me, I have relatives come through that'll say, bloody hell, I don't like your hair. Okay, or what are you doing with that idiot? Dump him as soon as you can. Okay, like, you know, if they were open and honest and free with their opinion in life, they're going to come through like that in spirit as well. Okay, but if you want to know what's coming up for you, go for a psychic reading. Okay, now it is the psychic side that I want to concentrate on in this episode, okay, because I am a psychic medium, which means that I do both kinds of readings. You know, I do psychic and I do mediumship. Again, you should always check before booking a reading that the reader that you're looking at offers the type of reading that you're looking for. Because not all mediums will do psychic readings and not all psychics will do mediumship readings. Okay? Anyway, why do we say psychic? Okay, why do we call them psychic readings? You know, in my grandmother's day and in my great-grandmother's day, they called them fortune tellers. Okay, and this isn't a term that you hear used too often these days. And that's because, you know, today we try to manage people's expectations and we try to give readings to give people control over their lives. You know, I at least try not to have people come back every few months for readings, okay? I try and give them enough information that they can take control of their lives. You know, my mother often talks about going to stay with her grandmother when she was a little girl, okay? That would be my great-great-grandmother. And she lived in a little village in Tipperary called Dundrum. And I know that there's a Dundrum in Dublin, but there's a village called Dundrum here in Tipperary. And it's not too far from the town that I live in, okay? But, you know, back in the day, before everybody had cars, you know, when she went to see her grandmother, it was always an overnight stay. And, you know, like that, she would go and stay with her grandmother for a few weeks during the summer holidays and stuff like that. But she says that when she would go into the shop in the village with her grandmother, she said people would literally be shoving their hands into my great-grandmother's face, asking her questions, okay? Because she was a palm reader. And by all accounts, you know, obviously, you know, I think I was 2 or 3 when she passed. So I never really got to, you know her. But, you know, people tell me that she was extremely accurate. And I tell you, to the point that people used to queue up outside her house from 6 a.m. for a reading. Okay, back in the day we didn't have the internet bookings and she never had a telephone in her house. Okay, she passed away in the mid to late 70s, so she would have passed maybe about 76, 77. Never had a telephone in her house, so people couldn't ring up to make an appointment. They literally had to queue outside her door and wait for an appointment. Okay, and they did. They used to come from all over at all hours of the day and night. Okay. But people were always looking to know how something was going to turn out or what decision they should make. So they'd always try and get an answer from her. So if they saw her in the shop, they'd literally shove their palm into her face and ask her, you know, how was such and such going to work out. Okay, and, you know, that's fine. And she was happy to give advice where she could. But these people believed, okay, now these people did, I don't know exactly obviously what my great-grandmother believed, but these people believed that what she saw in their palms was exactly the way that their lives would be, that there was nothing that they could do to change it. They believed that their lives were predetermined, okay, or predestined if you want to use that term, okay. Now we know better today. We know that our futures aren't set in stone. We understand better that although that there are certain challenges that we choose to take on when we made the decision to be reincarnated to Earth, that doesn't mean that certain things have to happen. Okay? And this is why the term fortune telling or fortune teller has largely been abandoned. Okay? And we now use the term psychic reading. And where does this term come from? Okay, what does a psychic reading mean? What is it? So our psychic energy, okay, is our personal energy. This is the part of us that's open to being read by others. And guys, we all do it. We all read each other. We read other people, okay? Because, you know, and I've talked about this in past episodes, we can all tell immediately if someone's in a good or bad mood. Okay, we can all read the energy of a room. This is you using your psychic ability to read other people's energy. So when we talk about doing psychic readings, what we're talking about is using our ability to read energy. Okay? And this is quite different from fortune telling as we would have known in the past, because nobody is going to, or nobody should be, telling you exactly what's going to happen. Like, we talk about what's coming up for you. What are the possibilities? What are the possible outcomes? We are giving you all the information that you need to make the most out of your life, to make informed decisions, and to avoid the pitfalls. Okay? Nobody can tell you how to live your life, because only you know what you want out of it. So everything is completely your decision. Okay, we can tell you the way things are going, and immediately when someone says, what do you want? Like I'm always saying to people, if I said to you now, let's get a takeaway for dinner. Do you want Chinese or do you want Indian? Like immediately you'll think, okay, I want one or the other. Okay, so when something is thrown at us, we make an immediate decision. And it's the same with the psychic reading. If I said to you, this is going to happen or that's going to happen, you'd immediately think, great, that's exactly what I want. Or no, I don't want that to happen. And then you have a choice. So do you let it happen the way that I'm telling you it's going to happen, or do you do something to change it? Okay, I hope I'm making sense. So let me give you an example. Okay, I did a psychic reading for a guy a few years ago. Okay, he wasn't that young. He was young, but he was in his 30s, maybe his late 30s, roughly at the time that I did the reading. Okay, now he was very focused on his career, which isn't a bad thing. Okay, but while he came to the reading with his career at the top of his agenda of questions to ask about, I personally never look at just one thing in a reading. Because there's a whole myriad of things that, contribute to your overall happiness and success. So I will look at everything that goes on around you, okay? And while I was looking at his cards, it was apparent to me that he was in a relationship. And a relationship that wasn't going very well at the time, okay? And I told him in the reading that his relationship was about to fall apart, okay? And that she wasn't happy within the relationship. Okay, so long story short, at the time that I read for him, they were together about 11 years. Okay, she was ready for commitment and family, and he was solely focused on his career. Okay, and he kept putting the relationship into second place in his life. Okay, so when I said to him that she wasn't happy, the relationship was about to fall apart, he told me that all was well in the relationship. I was totally wrong. Okay, everything was fine. His only issue in life was about his career. Okay, like what can I say? I can, you come for a reading, you pay me to tell you what I'm seeing. I'm telling you what I'm seeing. You can tell me if you're wrong, if I'm wrong, and that you don't believe me if you like, that's fine. But he came back to me after about six or 8 weeks or so later, okay, and he told me that what I'd said to him in the reading was playing on his mind. Okay, so in the days after the reading, he started paying more attention to his girlfriend and how she was behaving. Okay, and bearing in mind what I'd said in the reading and her behaviour and her attitude towards him in the couple of weeks after the reading, he booked a surprise weekend away for her. Okay, took her away for a weekend, and on that weekend he proposed to her. Okay, he said that he didn't want to risk losing her, and that what I'd said to him in the reading had made him more attentive to her and her attitude towards him and her humour. Okay. And when they got engaged, after they came back, she was his fiancée at this point, and she told him after that weekend away that she had actually intended to break up with him on that weekend. Okay, that was the weekend she said, that's it, I've had enough waiting around for him, I'm getting older, I want to have a family, I want to settle down and all this. Okay, that same weekend that he had booked the trip away was the weekend that she had intended to break up with him. Okay, but when he told her he was taken away for the weekend, she said, well, let's see what happens. And as it happened, he proposed. Okay, fast forward to today, they're happily married with a family of their own, and his career is still successful. Okay, so I know that's a lovely story, but what I'm trying to get across to you here is that at the time of his reading, he was on the path to separation from his partner because his focus was on other things in life. Okay, once I made him aware that the possibility here was likely to be that he would get dumped by his girlfriend, okay, then he was able to take preventative measures to stop that from happening. And he was able to change the whole trajectory of his life. His career still went on that path. You know, he still got the success in his career, but he was also able to have happiness in his personal life. Okay, and there has to be a balance. We call it a work-life balance these days, okay. He wanted both, obviously, but he was taking one for granted, and that was going to have a knock-on effect, okay. So now I will say the proposal wasn't necessarily, necessary at the time. He could have just talked to her. Okay, but they were together at that point for long enough. It wasn't just like a 3 or 4 month relationship. They were old enough. She wanted to have a family while she was still young enough to have a family. Okay, it was the right time for them. Okay, so the point that I'm really trying to make here is that he didn't have to accept that the relationship was doomed. He was able to take the information that I had given him and turn the situation around so that his future was what he actually did want it to be. Okay, so if you're the kind of person who thinks that everything in life is predetermined, okay, would you be thinking that it was his destiny to end up with this particular lady? Like, is that the way that you think it works? I don't know. I'm not the expert in all these things, okay? I can only tell you how things are from my perspective and my experience, okay? And perhaps this was predetermined, that this was going to be, the person that he was meant to be with, soulmates, if you like. But my view on this would be more that it was his destiny to learn to be more attentive to the needs and wants of the people closest to him, and not to allow the details of living get in the way of his ultimate happiness. Okay, now by the details of living, I do mean his job, okay? Because while job and career are important, and they ultimately give us a good lifestyle, they shouldn't be our entire focus in life, okay? Because, you might have heard the saying, we work to live, not live to work, okay? So in my view, of course, I like to think that everybody's predestined or predetermined to be happy, okay? But when we talk about soul plans or soul paths and the challenges that we have to take on in life, I don't necessarily think convincing her to marry him was the set out challenge, but I do believe that his challenge in life was to have more of a balance and to be more aware of what people around him need from him and how he can make them happy in order to make himself happy too. Okay, so this is part of his life lesson. Okay, so I guess if we're talking about a lesson from this, where we're talking about lessons, the lesson to get from this example is that, lessons we learn are predetermined, but not how we learn them. Am I making sense? Okay, so he was predetermined to learn that lesson, but how he learned it depended on a lot of life situations that he made to get him to that point in life. Okay, I hope that's making sense. I hope that's coming across. So when you go for a psychic reading, the reader can only read the energy that you present with on a particular day. Okay, so the reading is always going to be based on the energy that you're giving out. That's why I ask people to be relaxed and comfortable for a reading. If you're sitting in your car on your lunch break, afraid that someone will see you, on a phone to a psychic, then that's going to affect your energy, because your energy is going to be closed. You're going to, be cocooned, keep your energy in. Okay, and you're almost expecting the psychic to be a mind reader. Okay, so that kind of situation is going to affect the quality of your reading, because if you're not opening your energy, how do you expect your psychic to read it? Okay, the psychic will read the energy that you're presenting with, and they will give you the most likely and the best outcomes that you can expect from any situation. Okay, like the example I gave you about that gentleman and his relationship. Okay, he could have told me that I was wrong about his relationship, and he could have kept his focus entirely on his career, and his life would have turned out differently. Okay, he could have concentrated on his career. She would have dumped him 3 weeks after the reading and gone on and lived her life and met somebody else and blah, 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 blah. Okay, I just gave him the information. It was up to him to make the decision and take action as he chose. So his destiny wasn't written in stone. Okay, yes, absolutely, his relationship was about to end, but the reading gave him the heads up so that he could make his mind up about what he wanted to do about the situation. Okay? So no psychic will tell you what you should or shouldn't do. Well, at least they shouldn't tell you what you should or shouldn't do. They can tell you what's coming up and how things would go if you took a particular decision. Okay? But as I say, they won't or shouldn't tell you what to do. Okay, that's different. That's life coaching. Okay, that's not a psychic reading. Okay? And this is why things change. Okay, energy changes. And I know that the majority of you will know somebody who will tell you, that they go for a reading every 6 months or they go for a reading every 12 months or whatever. Okay? And of course, that's their prerogative. They can have as many readings as they wish and they can have them as often as they wish. Nobody's going to tell them no. From my perspective, I ask people to wait at least 6 months between readings, to allow the energy to settle down, to allow situations to work out and develop, okay? Because your energy doesn't change every few days or every couple of weeks or whatever, okay? Every time you make a change in your life, every time you make a decision in your life, it can take time for that energy to settle down. Okay, so I'm going to give you another example, okay? And this is an example that I use often when I'm explaining psychic readings to people. I need to think of a new one, really. I'm getting boring now in my old age. But if I was to read cards for you, right, and it came up in the cards that you were going to crash your car in 4 months' time and you were going to be injured to an extent that you would be off your feet for, say, 3 months, right? Well, obviously, this is something that you wouldn't want to have happen to you. Okay, so in this case, around the time that I had predicted that the accident was going to happen, you would probably, go and get your tires on your car checked, you'd get your brakes checked, you might even avoid driving for the whole month or, God forbid, you might even stick to the speed limit for the whole month, okay? But you would want to make sure that this didn't happen, okay? So because you had the heads up from the reading, you would ensure that it wouldn't happen. You do everything that you could to avoid it. But by making this change to your future, you would then change the long-term future that was discussed during your reading. Okay, because every change that we make is a domino effect. And when you're in the reading, and I tell you that you're going to have this car crash, you're going to take time off work, blah, 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 everything that we discuss in that reading brings us to an outcome or a point. But by changing this fact and making sure you don't have a car crash, then you're changing the long-term outcome that we've discussed. Okay, so in this particular example, if you didn't crash your car, then you wouldn't have to go to hospital, you wouldn't have to have physio, you wouldn't have to get someone in to help you around the house, to drive you to hospital or doctor appointments, you wouldn't have to fill out insurance forms, you wouldn't have to get a new car, you wouldn't have to take time off work, and so on and so on, okay? And as a result of these changes and outcomes, there would be other changes, a domino effect. So for example, if you had to take 3 months off work after an accident, you might then miss out on a promotion, which would mean you'd miss out on a pay rise, which might then mean that you couldn't afford the holiday that you had planned or a house that you were thinking of buying. So everything has a knock-on effect and everything changes the long-term outcome of your future. Okay, so do you see that our little decisions and actions can affect our long-term future? Okay, and it's for this reason that you hear of people who go for readings, every so often. Because they get the information that they need from the reading, and as a result they take action or they make decisions that affect their future, okay, as they're supposed to, and that's their right. That's why they came for a reading, so that they could take action. But it gets to a point, maybe 5 or 6 months, maybe sometimes longer, maybe sometimes shorter, but things have changed so much that they feel that the reading and the outcomes, it's all now defunct, it's all changed, and then they go for another reading. Okay, so energy changes and decisions affect our future. Okay, and this is why, and people say to me, well, can I just get a shorter reading? Can I just get the cards? Can I just get this or that or the other? a few years ago, I changed the way that I did readings. Okay, I still use tarot cards. And this is just me personally. I'm not saying it's right for everybody, but this is how I do it. I still use tarot cards, okay, because for me they're so accurate and they tell a full story. But I do not like to encourage an emotional dependency on readings. And that's what happens when people get readings every 6 months. It gets to a point where some people, not everybody, but some people won't make a decision without having a reading. So when I do psychic readings, I incorporate numerology into the reading, okay? Now, if you hadn't heard of numerology, you might have heard of the term numerology, but not necessarily understood it. Very, very quickly, numerology is one of the oldest ways of foretelling the future, okay? It has been used continuously for more than 2,000 years, which in my opinion tells us everything that we need to know, because if people keep going back for it, we can tell a lot about the accuracy of it. Okay, now, personally, I use the original Pythagorean numerology. Okay, it was invented by our old friend Pythagoras that some of you might remember learning about at school. Okay, so I can almost hear you all sighing about thinking about the memory of learning Pythagoras' theorem, in maths. Okay, we still have nightmares about it. But anyway, we know Pythagoras was a mathematician, he was a scientist, he was a philosopher, he was one of those people who didn't have a television. Okay, so he did a lot of study in a lot of different areas. But obviously being a mathematician, he studied the science of numbers. But he also studied astrology. So putting together what he knew about the science of numbers and what he learned about astrology, he realised that our lives create a pattern, okay, depending on when we were born, and believe it or not, depending on the name that we were given when we were born. All of these things can affect our lives going forward. Okay, and just thinking there as I'm talking, I did a numerology reading for somebody a few years ago, and she was expecting a baby and asked me to do the numerology for the names that she was considering for her baby. And when I looked, and she was very very set on the first name that she was given to her child, but I suggested, when I looked at the numerology, I suggested at the time that she would change just one letter in the name. So to bring it from, say, an anglicised or English spelling of the name to the Irish spelling of the name. Okay, I'm sure she won't mind. She probably won't be listening to this anyway. But the name she had chosen for her child was Aidan, A-I-D-A-N. And when I put that with the middle names and the surname of the baby, there was just some issues that were creeping up later in life for this child. When I changed the spelling to the Irish A-I-D-E-N, okay, and did that numerology, it absolutely changed the whole trajectory of that child's life. Okay, and she took my advice. I don't know yet, the child is still only about 9, I think. But he seems to be having a good life so far, okay? But just, and that's the way numerology works, okay? So the name that you're giving your child, and, the date that they're born on, because my son ended up having to be in emergency section a little bit earlier than he was due, and that had a knock-on effect, on his life going forward. Okay, thankfully not necessarily so bad, but a few things did change. Okay, so all of these things do affect our lives, and guys, that's something that I do. I look at names for babies, and if people are starting businesses, I look at the names and see what's best, for success. Okay, anyway, when we're talking about psychic readings on a personal level, using numerology, we can identify the best times for us to do things. The best time to introduce changes into our lives, the best times to get into relationships, the best times to get in touch with our spirituality, and so on and so forth. Because from the minute we're born, we begin a pattern that will dictate the key times in our lives for different things. Okay? And personally, I know that this can be so powerful because I've been using numerology over the last few years to introduce changes into my life, including losing weight. And I've struggled with weight all of my life. Okay? And part of my issue, and probably the biggest part of my issue, was that I wasn't introducing change at the right times. Okay? So when we know from our numerology where we are on our path, then we can make the right decisions. Okay? So your numerology forecast, if you have a reading from me, or if you know somebody else that does numerology, and the forecast that I give as part of the psychic reading is only a small part of what's available from numerology. But in any case, I give what I call a numerology forecast, and that will tell you what's high in your energy at any given time. So for example, this month it might tell you that you should be concentrating on your career, okay, but not making any decisions about your romantic relationship. Next month it might tell you, that you're going to meet a person, it's going to be a romantic interest here, but that it's not the right time for you. It's not the right person, or it's not the right time for you to embark on a long-term relationship, but enjoy it for what it is. Another month it'll tell you that this is now the right time to be making decisions about your long-term finances. Maybe it's the right time to buy a property, or maybe it's the right time to invest your money, or whatever. Okay, so the numerology will definitely help you with the timing of decisions. And then the tarot will help you with the possible outcome of these decisions. Okay, so I hope this is making sense. Okay, so nothing's predetermined. The numerology shows us that life goes on a pattern. Okay, that we work through certain patterns in our life, and we relive this pattern over and over again. So we can increase our chance of success in any area of our lives by looking at our numerology and deciding when is the best time to do this, or to implement this, or whatever in our lives. Okay. So I guess the point that I'm trying to make with all of this waffle, and I'll be finished soon, I promise. But my point here is that your life is absolutely not predetermined. Okay. The choices are yours. What psychics do is they give you a heads up as to what's ahead for you, what's coming up, and what are the possible outcomes of your decisions. But they're not going to tell you what you should do. Okay, so nothing's predetermined. Okay, yes, there's challenges you'll have to face. Yes, there's lessons you have to learn. And this is all part of your spiritual development, and it's all part of developing spiritually as a spiritual being. So that when you return to the spirit world, that you're advancing all the time. You're learning more about yourself. You're more of service to other spiritual beings. Okay, but how you learn those lessons, how you embark, or tackle those challenges, that's totally up to you, because you have full control. Okay. And just quickly, while we're on the subject of psychic readings, I should also talk about the tools that we use as psychics, okay? Because I've already mentioned that I use tarot cards, and that my grandmother taught me to read tea leaves, and that my great-grandmother used to read palms, okay? And in actual fact, my great-great-grandmother used to read bones and stones, which was a really old way of reading people, before we had fancy tarot cards. Nobody had fancy tarot cards in the olden days. But I'm telling you this to let you know that it doesn't matter how somebody is reading you. There are many tools for doing the same job. And I always say this when it drives my husband demented. But I'm saying, you can change a plug with a screwdriver or with a butter knife. Okay, I was raised by a single mother, so we always use butter knives. But you can change a plug with a screwdriver or with a butter knife. Okay, they both do the same job. I wouldn't recommend changing with a butter knife, health and safety announcement here, but you can do it. So there's different tools, that will do the same job. My grandmother read tea leaves, but when she was a little girl, she learned to read palms from her mother. Okay, because my great-grandmother read palms. But when my great-grandmother was a little girl, she learned to read bones and stones from her mother, who was my great-grandmother. My great-great-grandmother. My point here, anyway, is that each one of us read people. They read, I read, but they all read people in the same way. Okay, exactly the same way. We just use different tools to do it. So when a psychic is reading you, they are reading your energy. They're not reading the cards, okay? And from my point of view, I could read the same card for 6 different people and tell them all something different. That's because I'm reading their energy, not the cards. I've never ever read a book on tarot cards. I just don't know. You could ask me what a card means. I'm just picking up my deck while I'm talking, and the first card that I pick up is the 10 of Wands. I've no idea what that means. It means nothing to me because I've never read a book on tarot. Because I'm reading energy. I'm not reading tarot cards. The cards will direct me into which area of life I need to talk about. Not what exactly that I'm going to say. Okay, your energy is what dictates the reading, not the cards. Okay, and yes, it is possible to do readings on video call or phone. I use Zoom all the time and have been for several years. Okay, I just rely on a different energy. So I'm clairvoyant, okay, I see energy and I look at your energy. That's why I love to be able to see people on the video call, even though I can use the phone, but I love to be able to see people on the video call, okay? So I look at the energy in your aura and I tune into the vibration in your voice, okay? And I remember a few years ago, a well-known psychic medium here in Ireland was being interviewed on the radio. And he said unequivocally, you know, certainly, it's not possible to read someone over the telephone or over the internet. Okay? Take this kind of general advice with a pinch of salt, because that's somebody's opinion. Just because he isn't able to do it doesn't mean that other people aren't. Okay? That's why you should research your psychics or your mediums. Okay? Don't book a medium because they were the right person for somebody else. Okay? Now, take that with a pinch of salt when it's talking about me. You can book me. Okay, I'm joking. Okay, but you should never book a medium or a psychic because they were right for somebody else. Okay? Remember that readings are based on energy. So you need to be comfortable with the person who's reading you. Okay? Otherwise, your energy won't open up enough for an accurate reading. So I always say, you know, if you're considering a particular psychic or a particular medium, look at their social media, look at their YouTube channel, which I haven't updated for a long time, but look, you know, at their Facebook, look at their, you know, Instagram, their TikTok, whatever. Look at how they work. Look at who they are. Look at their videos. See, is this somebody that you feel that you can be comfortable with, that you can open up your energy to? Okay, because if the first time you're seeing a psychic or a medium is the day that they're doing the reading for you, what if you don't like them? And let's face it, guys, we're all psychic. We all make a judgment on somebody the minute that we meet them. I don't like this person. I don't like her energy. She's too loud for me. She's too quiet for me. You know, we all make we all make a call on somebody's energy the minute we meet them. And if you're doing that on the day of your reading, like, that's too late. Okay, because if you don't like your psychic, then your energy is not going to open up, and then it's impossible to read you. And that's why you might get an inaccurate reading. Okay, so watch somebody's videos. Okay, go to some of their sessions. You know, if they're doing lives, tune in, join in with conversations, see if there's somebody that you would like, because that's the most important thing that's going to dictate the accuracy of your reading. Okay, otherwise you're going to sit there with your arms crossed and you're not going to open up, and the psychic or the medium is not going to be able to read your energy. Okay, so choose a medium or a psychic for you. Okay, and you know, don't think that your future is predetermined. You can do so many things to change your future and to get the outcome that you most want. Okay, your future's in your hands, as they say, not mine. Okay, I don't have a magic wand to make it all work out for you, but I can definitely look at the possible outcomes and what's coming up for you in the future. Okay, so thanks for sticking with me. That probably went on a bit too long. I apologise. I get on my high horse sometimes and I start talking and I can't stop. I did kiss the Blarney Stone, so that's, in my defence, that's where it comes from, the gift of the gab. So for now, I'm going to say goodbye. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. And please do share the podcast. If you know anybody that you think might have an interest in this subject matter, it would help me so much. You know, do give it a like on whatever platform that you're listening on. I would love to hear your feedback. You'll find all my contact links in the description box attached to this podcast. So for now, I'm going to say goodbye, guys. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you in the next episode of Life After Life. Until then, take care and stay safe.
Discussing everything about the afterlife and spirit world.